Turn your dial to cable 18. You will see the best in TV. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Sit back and listen. You will hear the best conversation of the year. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom.
Welcome to Talking with Tom. I'm Tom Dacey. Don't adjust your sets. Ed McCarver is not here this evening. He is in Florida visiting his sister. I am joined by Mr. John Zimmerman of the Squared Circle.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
We're both doing double duty tonight.
Yes. Immediately following Talking with Tom, as always, is the Squared Circle. And we got a lot to talk about tonight, but Talking with Tom right now.
Absolutely. And I have a very special guest this evening, somebody who I've known for 20 years at least, Mr. Richard Branigan. And Rich, you are currently with the Red Cross?
I am. And it's a pleasure and honor to be back with you, Tom. After a while, it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day when Tony Persia used to be on with me.
You were on with him, or he was on with you? Not sure how that worked.
He composed the original Talking with Tom theme.
That's right. Those were the days. We had some fun in this studio.
Of course, that was also back at our old studio on Broadway,
mm-hmm.
which we were just talking about
off
air. Yeah, I remember being sandbagged in that studio by the NHTV staff.
Storm Josh, I believe it was.
Storm Josh. Yeah, my first storm on live TV. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Now,
those were the days.
What is your title with the American Red Cross?
You know, Tom, I'm the Chief Program Officer for the Connecticut and Rhode Island region. So in essence, I have combined Chief Operating Officer duties, and I'm also responsible for some of our programs, not all, but the programs I'm responsible for are services to the armed forces, our international services that are provided by the region, and then all of our volunteer recruitment and engagement comes through my team. So in addition to that, I have our facilities and budget management and back office operations to support the two states in our regional setup.
What obviously it's Connecticut and
Rhode Island. We have all of the Connecticut municipalities except for Greenwich. Greenwich is part of the Greater New York chapter. They stayed aligned with Westchester when the divisions were set up, and all of Rhode Island. And I think we cover services for Fishers Island and a few towns in Massachusetts as well that we respond to. So.
Wow. Now I know. One of the areas we wanted to touch on was disaster relief.
Yeah, that's near and dear to my heart. We've gone through a lot of changes as part of the organization's response, and really it started several years ago with the Red Cross regionalizing its operations to make sure that the responses to disasters were consistent. You would have some locations where community chapters could not respond because they didn't have the financial wherewithal to do so, and other chapters where they were responding to everything, and there had to be a balance in between that. So the concept with the Red Cross has evolved to a national organization which has one central audit and has regional components and smaller chapter components, but it's all done under one administrative operation. So there's consistency in the delivery of service, which is really crucial. We're chartered by Congress to alleviate human suffering in the face of disasters, whether those are caused by war or whether those are man-made or whether those are caused by nature. So our first charter came at about the turn of the 20th century, around the year 1900, and the organization was founded by Clara Barton After she was a Civil War nurse, and in 1883, she helped found the American Red Cross, which was part of an international movement to deliver humanitarian services to the points where they were needed. So our disaster services today have evolved from those very simple beginnings, and when we respond to disasters, and we do respond to them every single day. On average, we're responding to a single-family house fire in Greater New Haven alone, just at least twice a week on average. Wow. And in our region, for all of Connecticut and Rhode Island, it's usually 2 disaster responses every single day. Nationally, it's a matter of every 60 or 70 seconds the Red Cross is responding to a disaster somewhere. And those are the smaller disasters. Those are the ones where people are put out onto the street from their house, and the Red Cross comes with a blanket or with food for them, or actually we issue them the equivalent of a credit card, and we do a client intake process to keep track of the needs and so forth. But they're in essence given lodging, they're giving food for the owners of the property and the family. So that's the evolution of the Clara Barton legacy, and those are the small scale disasters, and then we respond to everything in between and all the way up to Hurricane Katrina or Hurricane Sandy.
Right.
Yeah, we're still dealing with the effects of Hurricane Sandy.
Now, funding for the American Red Cross, where does that come from?
It's really comes from the generosity of the American public, either individual donors, corporations, foundations. People get confused. They think because we're chartered by Congress that we receive federal funding. We can receive funding through grants and so forth, but we are dependent on the generosity of the American public, and that materializes itself into our responses. So for Hurricane Sandy, the Red Cross was the beneficiary of millions of dollars, and that turned around into our response in feeding people that were in the 12 affected states, and keeping people in shelters for a few months at a time, and feeding people up in high-rise apartment buildings in the Far Rockaways and in Staten Island. So a very complicated response portion, but the generosity allowed us to continue in the recovery mode. So we've been able to work with agencies, both state, local government, and other nonprofit organizations to get relief and recovery support to residents who have been affected. So in Connecticut, we were able to do just over $2 million in grants. Wow. To help people along the shoreline and help establish the infrastructure for long-term recovery in the state.
I know that was a doozy of a storm. I consider myself lucky during that one. Thank God.
I live on the shoreline in East Haven, and we were hit really hard. And,
twice.
I was fortunate enough that my property wasn't damaged that much, but a friend of mine lost her entire home.
Oh yeah.
And and then 2 young boys, middle school age, and
right.
It was really hard.
It's
at that age, to lose all your possessions and. And not only that, the stuff that you can't replace, like
right.
family heirlooms and
right.
and pictures and stuff like that. And to have somebody like you come in and your organization help out, it's like a hug on a bad day.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's a great way to put it. And it's not me. It's the way our organization is set up is we're dependent on volunteers. So in our region, in Connecticut and Rhode Island, we have 30 paid staff members. So I'm one of 30, but we have 3,000 volunteers. Wow. So those are the people who go out in the middle of the night, and they are amazing. Our disaster action team members will respond in the middle of the night and go out and help people put a blanket around their shoulders and give them a shoulder to cry on, and then the next day they'll be back in work.
That says it right
doing
there,
their jobs. So they're absolutely amazing, talented, committed, and without them, we could not do the job that we do. collectively.
Well, now I know Tom has your information, so on your page we'll put up information on how to
Sure.
become a volunteer.
Absolutely.
And give back.
It's
to our
very
community.
simple. If people go on our website, www.redcross.org, it will take them through the process.
Okay.
It will tell them what we do and what we'll talk about a few other things that Red Cross has to offer, and it'll take them, that one website will take them into the different directions they need to go.
Now, your office is based in Farmington,
Yes.
and we were talking before we went on the air about drills for emergency. You want to talk
right.
about that a little bit?
Well, we just did the emergency preparedness initiative from the state. It's something that I think this was the third year. The legislature passed it with Governor Malloy's executive direction to have an emergency preparedness exercise. I think in the meantime, Hurricane Irene happened just before that. Then they had the first exercise. Then Hurricane Sandy hit. Then they had the second exercise. Now we had a calm year, which was wonderful. We're still doing recovery, as I said, but we went through this exercise, and I think just about every single municipality in the state participated. Every state agency participated. All of the organizations that are active in disaster. There's a whole group of voluntary organizations that people don't realize because we're here in Connecticut and we're just getting into the disaster business by experience. But in other portions of the country, these are groups called VOADs, and the volunteer organizations active in disasters. A lot of those are faith-based groups. They include groups like the Salvation Army and Red Cross and Catholic Charities and the Southern Baptists and the Seventh-day Adventists and the Mormons and the Presbyterian Disaster Services. And these are groups of all volunteers who mobilize and will come to a disaster scene or help with preparedness or help with recovery. Each kind of has their own specialty along the things that we do. So those groups are active in the preparedness exercise as well, and it's great to have everyone working together, and you get to know the players across the table, and you go through the exercises, and when we do that, there are two major things that happen on the course of an emergency response, which is a unified command set up under the guidance of the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA. So FEMA's guidance says that you will follow one set of unified commands. So police, fire, all of the state agencies, all of the nonprofits, we all fall under unified command, and the command is under the jurisdiction or the direction of the governor. So he's in charge when it comes to emergencies, just as in a local setting, the chief executive officer or chief elected officer is in charge. Mike Frieda is in charge here, even though he has an EMD and staff, and a local response, Mike is the guy that's in charge. So you go through that process and you get to know each other and who's sitting at the table, and you get to stand up and in a drill get to brief the governor on what your agency or your organization is doing. So it's a good exercise.
And you also have an app.
Yeah, you mentioned that goes back to like the 1900s, but now you're in the modern era, and you know, like every other thing out there, you have an app. I mean, we have.
I'll digress a little bit and take my phone out because I have to show the apps that we have. The Red Cross apps are on my phone. I don't know if Walter can get a shot of those, but I keep them under my utilities in Red Cross, and to give you an idea of what our apps are, you know, there's an app for earthquake, there's one for hurricanes, there's one for flooding, there's a tornado app, there is a first aid app, and all of these are free downloads. If you go to your browser or you go to your app store, you download these, and you know, the first aid app will give you recommended first aid as seen by the Red Cross and how to respond to different emergencies. Okay. So you can go through different types of emergencies just as you would in the different response or preparedness apps like Hurricane, it'll tell you how to prepare. It'll tell you what to do right before and right after. It'll tell you what to take with you and how to prepare your emergency kit.
So this is something we should download now
yes.
rather than wait for the disaster to happen.
I will
Download it now.
When you have power.
Yes,
right after
while
the
you
show.
have power.
Right after the show, I will download
Right.
the app.
And for an older organization, this is an organization, the Red Cross, that's continually looking to do things better. And when it comes to social media, and it comes to the App Store and things that we're doing to try and stay current, I'm just absolutely amazed. From my perspective, working 30 years plus in government and now working 2 years for the Red Cross, I've seen more change in a positive direction in 2 years than I had seen in a long time in government, because you take the politics out of it, and all you're doing is focusing on mission delivery and service to the clients, which is really amazing.
Well, if I can digress for a moment, we were talking earlier. Ed usually does a segment of like weird news or something like that, and it's not necessarily weird, but something that changed the course of your organization and all of the emergency responders. 70 years ago, this week, the disaster, the Hartford Circus Fire. Right. And on Sunday, July 6th, at the Mark Twain Museum Center in Farmington Avenue in Hartford, they're going to have a discussion with the authors Stuart Onan, who wrote The Circus Fire, and Mike Skidgel, who wrote The Hartford Circus Fire. And I read Stuart Onan's book because he also wrote a book about the Red Sox. And I happened to pick up the one about the Hartford Circus Fire. And 70 years ago, I mean, they didn't have quite the organizational effort that you have now. Right. And part of the reason that it was such a disaster, not just the fire, it was the response afterwards. And there was people scattered all over the place, and there was no regular line of communication, as you just said, that it goes from the police to the fire and to the different organizations. Right. And a lot of that now can be avoided. And as we saw with the response to more recent events. But in conjunction with that, P.T. Barnum, who's celebrating his birthday on July 5th, he was born in 1810, and he's right. P.T. Barnum Museum right here in Bridgeport. They're going to be tomorrow, actually, unveiling new U.S. postage stamps commemorating the circus. Oh, wow. And they're going to be a free admission tomorrow at the Barnum Museum at 2 p.m. And they got a big event going on. You're going to be able to see the new postage stamps, as well as every year we have the Barnum Festival, celebrating P.T. Barnum and the roots of the circus and the sideshow right here in Connecticut. And it's just so strange that they both fall, around the same area and around the same time. And getting back to that, we were discussing that the Red Cross did respond at the Hartford fire. Right. And now here we are 7 years later, and we've got such a we've learned so much.
And what we've learned, just the communication and all. Unfortunately, you learn by trial and error, and you learn by in that case trial and bloodshed and so forth. And we. When it comes to responses, we respond to all types of disaster, and I said earlier, man-made. So one of the first things I was involved with was our response to the Sandy Hook tragedy, where we came in and provided, within a couple of hours, we were on the ground and we provided support, and in a lot of different forms. And people would say afterwards, well, what did you guys do? And we did as much as we could to support the community. We had people who came in, volunteers who came in from all over the country who were trained in this type of disaster response, who had experience at Columbine and at Virginia Tech and in airline crashes, which we respond to routinely as well. So you're dealing with a higher level of response, and you know what to do with some
the
of those
outpouring
things.
of donations
for Sandy
Hook was incredible. Now I work at the Postal Service.
Yeah.
And I work at the main facility where all the mail comes in, and we literally had tractor trailers full of donation of goods and letters. You know, every school kid in the country wrote letters and sent, you know, little mementos and things like that. And we had tractor trailers day in and day out for months at a time of just the outpouring. So I can imagine what was coming into you folks.
So we ended up, you know, this is sort of unique is how we look at how we responded to it, because they were getting inundated. The town was getting inundated. The volunteers there were getting inundated with all of those things. And there is expertise out there on how to process those things. So we brought in some subject matter experts from our national headquarters that work with us locally, and some of our volunteer partners who helped set up with the local task force, the Newtown Volunteer Task Force. Within about 24 to 48 hours, they had, once the decision was made on how to handle this, we set up a 1-800 number, went back through the state, helped, AT&T donated all the equipment, they had space donated, and it was amazing to see the whole community come together around those issues. And I think that the number was somewhere around 70,000 teddy bears that came through.
Wow.
And then when we're all redistributed back out. So Newtown is an amazing community. I've had the honor to meet some of the leadership from Newtown, including their first select person, and there's a lot of positive things that came out of that and still come out of that.
Right. And then
If we can switch gears for a moment
Sure.
and
Yeah,
talk a
go
little
ahead.
bit about Biomed.
Biomed is our blood services portion of the Red Cross, which a lot of people they know about the Red Cross, but they usually only know one or two things. So you have people who donate blood all of the time, and that's their experience with Red Cross. And you know, I met someone last week from the New Haven area that was working on her 12th gallon of blood donations, and it takes 2 decades to reach those plateaus, and it's an amazing commitment. About 90% of the blood supply in Connecticut comes through the American Red Cross. Almost all of that, if not all, comes through the state-of-the-art facility that's in Farmington, where by the Yukon Health Center. Happens to be where our office is for the region, but it's an amazing process that is so highly regulated. The Food and Drug Administration sets all of the standards, and it's a hospital-like facility there with very strict regulations and very tough protocols to follow to preserve that precious gift that people have given. And I think through that center there, over 100,000 units of blood are processed every year. There's somewhere around 3,000 blood drives in the state, and right now we're helping on our side, on the chapter side, helping with recruiting of even more volunteers to continue to assist in that process. And I know, Tom, there's a blood drive coming up.
Yes, I was going to mention there is a blood drive coming up here in North Haven in memory of a good friend of ours with the Knights of Columbus, Bob Wojcik. I believe it's on August 2nd,
Right.
and it's going to take place at the American Legion here in North Haven.
Right.
They do have a Facebook page, by the way, so if anyone wants information, they do have a Facebook page.
And people can go on the website and call for an appointment if they want to donate blood.
now I know my
At that.
office does a blood drive, and you know we get a notice in advance, and the blood mobile, I'm guessing it's called.
Yes.
Comes
Yeah.
out to our facility, and you know, while we're on the clock, you know, I mean, we can go in and donate blood.
Right.
How would somebody, like, if you own a business or you work at a facility, how would you get the blood mobile to come to your facility?
It's done a couple of different ways, but we have staff at the Red Cross who, if you go on the website, it will hook you up. It'll give you our contact information for the Connecticut region for blood. And there are staff members who will come and meet with that particular business and decide whether they have a facility there that could accommodate. Sometimes it's a cafeteria or an auditorium or something along those lines, or a meeting room, or they have the different blood mobiles that come around. And if they do it in a larger setting, that's, you know, they can increase the number of donors that they can handle at a particular point in time. So it's always to our advantage to work with the employers to do that and to have willing employees. And people roll up their sleeves and they donate. They do it with a generous spirit, and it's so much appreciated.
Well, I know sometimes there's even, I don't want to call it an incentive, but a little reward. I know one year they give out Red Sox T-shirts, and we were actually in New York.
At least it wasn't Yankees.
Yeah, exactly. It costs you blood to get into the Yankee Stadium.
Right.
But that aside, one year we were in New York, and the Mets were sponsoring a blood drive, and if you gave blood, you got a pair of Mets tickets.
Wow.
You know, but yeah. So is that through sponsorship as well? Like kind of like
I think there's
program?
some very close relationships, and I think we work closely with Massachusetts on the blood region side, and actually one of the spokespersons for Red Cross in Massachusetts, and I think people may start to see him down here is Big Papi, David Ortiz.
Yes.
So I think that's something that's I shouldn't probably say it's in the works, but I know there's a very close relationship with the Red Sox and some of the sports teams there, and the spirit and the generosity of the American public in stepping up and rolling up their sleeves and donating blood. I think there's a lot of positive things that happen to support that. And that's one of when people think about the Red Cross and they think about our service during the wars and so forth, those are the types of images that come to mind.
I know that there is a weight requirement though to donate blood. Can't remember what it is. Do you know offhand?
I don't know those requirements. I think there is a minimum for health standards, and again, these are typically not Red Cross standards. These are Food and Drug Administration standards that we're asked to quality control and to make sure we adhere to those policies.
Right.
Okay.
Now you also offer like training for first aid, babysitters, certification, that kind of stuff.
We do a whole series of preparedness, health, and safety classes. Okay. We also do nurse assistant training. We have a program that runs actually in New Haven that trains nurse assistants, and it trains phlebotomists. It's a very economical way for people to gain entry into the medical field. We also train people for their first jobs, like babysitting. And there's a couple of great videos that are out there as TV commercials about the need for Red Cross training, and at 12 or 13-year-olds, sometimes they don't have that experience, but getting some practical first aid experience and getting some hands-on experience in how to handle young children is a good first opportunity.
And generally there's an office in each town, as I know?
There are trainings that are done throughout the region, and there was a time back 30 plus years ago where there were probably more than 40 chapters of the Red Cross, each individually operated in their own separate kind of nonprofit status, and that's been consolidated, as I said earlier, to ensure that services can be delivered in an equitable and an efficient way.
Yes, because I know where I am currently in Wallingford, ours has shut down.
Right, and we have an office in New Haven, and we used to have one in Middletown, for example. But there are things that are being done, like our online services, like some of the trainings that we do, that allow us to be more mobile, and in many respects, back in those days, if you think about it this way, in all of those different communities, say there was 30 or 40 of those separate chapters, they each had their own chapter executive, they each had their own accountant, they each had their own chief operating officer, a disaster program person, a preparedness person, and a lot of what we do is done through the efforts of volunteers. So you need a smaller cadre of workers, but more people out there in the field and less institutional hardware to do it. So it ensures that you can continue to deliver that service where it's needed most, and that you're able to do it regardless of location.
Just want to remind everyone that the phone lines are open. If you'd like to give us a call, you can give us a call at 203-234-0025. We'll be here till about 8 o'clock with Richard Branigan from the Red Cross. So give us a call.
And you also offer services for the armed forces?
You know, one of the core things that the Red Cross does is, and our mission has been to offer services to the active duty military and to an expanding number of veterans, and that's always been something that we've done. But service to the armed forces is really near and dear to our hearts. It's something that during an active time of war, we will have Red Cross staff stationed in those foreign countries and in the theaters where the action is taking place. And I think next year there's a big reunion of the Vietnam War coming to an end, and it'll be done, I want to say a year from now in July. So there'll be a reunion of those Red Cross folks as well who were deployed overseas into Vietnam and served as resource. Especially in a modern day and age where everything is instantaneous, and you can text message someone halfway around the world, and you can email someone or call them on your cell phone. When you're deployed in a military active duty location, you cannot get emergency leave without a message coming through that's verified from the American Red Cross. And that's the protocol we've had since World War II with the military. And it allows us, the Red Cross, that has the responsibility of verifying the need. So there's either medical documentation that's necessary or some other authentication of the need for that soldier or sailor to return for the family emergency. And in many cases it's not great news, so there's other assistance that might be rendered, but in other cases it's joyous news, the birth of a child or the someone recovering from an emergency operation or something of that kind. So that's one of those honored trusts that the Red Cross has, that we will verify that message and we will deliver it. And I have talked to several active duty and recent veterans, members of the military, who have benefited from that. And it's amazing how many Red Cross stories there are out there. And the other thing that we do is for prior to deployments and return from deployments, we hold briefing sessions to allow the members of the military and their families to know what services are available, not just from us, but from other sources. So we provide those pre-deployment and coping with deployment type briefings, and then provide services and referral information to veterans and active duty and their family, so we can link them up. If they're having a financial concern, we can help link them with a Soldiers and Sailors Fund or something they may not be aware of. And the other thing we're doing is working directly with veterans in the hospital, such as the Veterans Hospital in West Haven. We just finished a great project. It was a Touch of Home was the name of the project, and what our volunteers did was they went into a number of the veterans' rooms and conducted informal interviews with the veteran. What was their family like? What was their history? What did they like to do when they were growing up? Did they have any other hidden talents and so forth? And they gave that information to another set of volunteers who produced a collage, like a piece of art that went on to the wall of that patient's room, and it allowed them to have dialogue. And with the staff at the VA, they were amazed at what they found out about that veteran, which led to more dialogue, and people who come to visit them could see the collage and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were such and such." And
wow,
that is nice.
It's good to hear something positive about the VA
and the veterans.
recently,
yes.
Yeah, and there's one great story about there was a gentleman who's I believe is in West Haven, and he was a jazz musician during the Vietnam era, and I guess he had a great job. He was a pianist and went around playing in a combo group, entertaining the troops, and that was his experience. And he was in forward areas, and he did an amazing job. But in talking with him, he was really focused on that jazz age in the late 60s, early 70s that he played in. And so we had the challenge of trying to come up for his collage with some music. And I had the privilege of calling Ken Tedeschi over at the high school.
Yes. Yep.
And in about 15 minutes, traded a couple of emails, and in about a 15 minutes after my conversation, I had an email back from him. I have music for you. He left it in an envelope. I picked it up at the school, and we made copies, and the veteran had his collage. And it was something Ken had his kids involved with, and you know, he does a great job with everything he touches. But this was one of those things that the touch went far beyond the school. It was great.
As we often said, we owe our veterans a great deal of thanks.
Oh, without a doubt. You know, my dad gave his life in service, and you know, I know quite a few people and have been involved in the DAV and things of that nature. And I mean, I grew up with it my whole life. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's something positive that comes out of a very negative situation.
And for all those
Absolutely.
veterans that are watching, thank you for your
Yes,
service.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we approach the 4th of July.
Yes.
Yes.
Hope it's not a stormy one. You know, we were talking about these storms earlier, and I understand Storm Arthur they're worried about now.
Arthur has made his presence known. We've been on conference calls already today, looking at the storm track, and I know the state is tracking it, and the NOAA, the National Atmospheric, whatever those people are. There's a ton of acronyms in my world, and you know, everyone's keeping an eye on the 4th of July and seeing where we are. But they're expecting some heavy rain, and hopefully everything will go off as scheduled.
I know before I left the house, I don't know where it was, but somebody already postponed their fireworks until Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah, the weekend is supposed to be another sparkling weekend, so
Oh.
that'll be great.
And you also offer international services. What do you do worldwide?
You know, the worldwide, people think about the evolution of the Red Cross a little bit, and the Geneva Convention. So the interest in the international side of things was really the start of the organization, and it's been focused on disaster here in America for a long time, thanks to Clara Barton. But the evolution of the organization is based on the respect for 7 guiding principles. Humanity and is part and parcel of that, and we are a non-political organization. We are a neutral organization. So we look out for people who can't look out for themselves as an international body, and we have affiliate organizations in over 80 countries that help us do that. And in many respects, they're the same as us in that they're volunteer-led and directed. And the respect for international humanitarian law is something that we help promote here locally as well, and we offer training classes for students, and we work with the law schools and try and make sure that international humanitarian law is part of the curriculum going forward. And then we do international tracing services. Believe it or not, we are still doing family links and restoring family links from the Holocaust, from World War II era.
Wow.
But we've had some success, and cases come through, and especially when there's a war-torn situation, like in the Democratic Republic of Congo, for example, in Africa, and the continent of Africa, has had some issues over the last number of years. And so we have people here who are looking to reunite with their families.
Oh, wow.
And we've had some success of late in bridging that gap and being able to communicate through the international refugee community and into some of these refugee camps to deliver Red Cross messages back to those family members and to provide that link.
Well, I don't know if you're involved, but right now we've got some issues with children in Texas.
Yes.
Is the Red Cross responding and providing any service there?
Red Cross, FEMA was charged
Okay.
with providing service and directing the response. And the Red Cross has been asked to help in the form of providing subject matter expertise in how to deal with children. We're also providing support services like we did in all of our other disasters. But we have a certain expertise to handle some of those things. And part of what we're talking about, and this is a great question, because those family links on an international border, that's exactly what we're doing, is providing the linkages between the children and their family members back home. So it's
amazing.
It's an amazing service that those volunteers and staff that are very, very highly trained and specific do. And then getting back to the apps, I like to wrap it around to the apps, because we were talking about the circus fire before, and family members became separated, and there were no way to identify where they were, and they went days and days of anguish, not knowing if people were alive or dead. The Red Cross, if you look at our apps, the hurricane app, for example, our apps for disaster have a safe and well link, and we open that up during a disaster so that you can go on and register on the website or through the app and just say I'm safe and get that message out. And then if you're looking for someone, you can go back through the website and find out that person is safe and well.
I like that. That's awesome.
So during disasters like a large-scale Sandy or Katrina or something, where you don't know where people are, or they're in a shelter, they can register at a shelter through the Safe and Well website, and people will know where they are, and you can send messages out that you're okay.
I'm definitely getting that app after the show.
Yeah.
I did it for our preparedness exercise. We put up a simulated Safe and Well disaster, and I was able to go on and log in and say I'm safe and well in the State Armory.
Wow.
So that was fun.
So take us through like a disaster hits. What is your response? You personally, and what would happen? So we have
a typical
the hurricane
disaster for Rich Branigan.
Right. So well, some people would argue that my whole life has been a typical disaster, but hopefully those people won't call in today. So, for me, I started with the Red Cross, as I said, a little less than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I had just finished a tenure in the town of North Branford as town manager, and before that I was here as Public Works Director in North Haven. So I had a good deal of government and municipal experience, but when I got to Red Cross, I didn't know anything, because I was not Red Cross trained, and Red Cross is one of the few meritocracies out there. You have to be trained, you have to be credentialed to hold certain positions of responsibility. So in my case, when Sandy was coming up the coast, the best thing they could figure out to do with me was to stick me in the State Armory in front of the governor, because I spoke government, and they figured I would do the least amount of damage at that location. And I'm not sure if that was true or not, but it gave me a good hands-on experience, and it allowed me to find out what the Red Cross was doing, and then be able to relate that back and forth with our state partners. And we work hand in hand with the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security and all of their regional coordinators. Their regions, there's 5 regions in the state of Connecticut. We have 5 Red Cross territories to match that. So our staff is deployed into those areas. We have had shelters that were open that became multi-jurisdictional shelters where more than one community bands together. And then we support that along with the state and the local governments. So my typical disaster response is I deploy to the State Armory. I am in communication with our headquarters, and usually I'm there at the end of every day. So I never saw, during Sandy, I was at the Armory every morning at about 7 a.m. and I got home at about 10 o'clock at night after I stopped at our headquarters. So I never saw our headquarters, which happened to be in Middletown, in the daylight. I couldn't tell you what it looked like or where it was. But what happens with Red Cross is we go from a mom and pop operation of, as I said, 30 paid staff members, and not all of them are in disaster. Maybe less than half of those folks are in disaster. But when we go operational, and there's a very set procedure for that. We go from, 12 or 15 people in disaster upwards of 500 in 72 hours.
Wow.
And then we could even triple that number if the storm continues, between our arrangements with other volunteers and partners that we have, and organizations that we work with, and companies that we work with.
Wow.
So we mobilize, and my responsibility during disaster is to be the voice of Red Cross with the government. So I'm the state relations director.
Now, you mentioned that 500 plus volunteers. Who can volunteer, and what can they expect to do? Is there different aspects, different people that you're looking for or need, skill sets, or just show up and we'll throw a rag at you and go to it?
There are people who can just show up, and during a disaster event, we have people that show up as spontaneous volunteers or event volunteers, and they come in and they're wonderful because they'll give what they have to give, and we'll take advantage of those in certain functions. We have other people who come in and they're just absolutely amazing. They give us upwards of 40 hours a week as volunteers, and they have talent, they have dedication and great hearts, and they are the full spectrum of people who come in and help us shred paper, all the way to people who come in and help us run our organization from the very top. We have volunteer partners that we work with, and when I was hired, and since then, my boss, who is the CEO, made it clear to all of us that we will fail in our jobs if we do not engage volunteers to support. So my org chart of my position has volunteers in it. I have a volunteer who helps with service to the armed forces. I have a volunteer who has an interest in international services. I have Patty McKnight here in town, who we've known for a number of years, is my volunteer partner, who helps me with the strategic part and the mission parts of things, and on the leadership team. So we build ourselves around volunteers, and people can do just about anything with the Red Cross, from being a canteen provider at a blood drive, or an ambassador at a blood drive to make sure that people's experience, the donor experience, are great, all the way up to being a leader of a disaster action team, where you're going out in the middle of the night or in an afternoon and helping people through a small-scale disaster, or all the way up if they're trained to be, we have a gentleman that I had the pleasure of speaking with last week, who is our logistics coordinator for the region. So he has about 50 people working under him in logistics. He's a volunteer. He's a former executive at United Parcel Service, and he helped run, actually he ran, during Hurricane Katrina, he ran the shelter at the Superdome.
Oh, wow.
So this is a volunteer from Connecticut that went down there and took that over. So that's some amazing talent. Yeah.
With the Silverdome.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's a wrestling joke.
And now they can get that information on your website too, if they're interested.
They
in
can
volunteering.
if they go to the redcross.org. There's ways to donate, but there's a way to volunteer. They can onboard themselves up to a certain point, and then there's a number of options they have. We have existing opportunities that are in the queue that people can sign up for. As I said, blood drive ambassador is one thing that we're pushing hard in all of our communities around the state, because we have those 3,000 blood drives. But the disaster volunteers and that network, we have people that help us with preparedness, health and safety, and community preparedness. We have an initiative for teaching senior preparedness, and we train volunteers to go into senior centers and into age-restricted housing communities, especially that are vulnerable, and we train them on preparedness using a senior bingo game, and they have a great time. They get prizes, but they learn about preparedness. We have another project called the Pillowcase Project, and it's co-sponsored by Disney, and the kids that are usually 3rd and 4th grade, I believe, are getting pillowcases that they learn how to make a kit and put their preparedness items in the kit and take it home with them. So it's not just about the response. It's about the opportunity to bring that message out, and the more we prepare people, the more resilient communities we build, the less we will have to spend. Anyone will have to spend on the recovery side of things.
I wanted to ask you. I know you've been involved in the community for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the most memorable part of your career?
Wow. I should say Winter Storm Josh, where where you guys invited me down, didn't tell me it was a live call-in show during the middle of a snowstorm.
That was a 24-hour broadcast too, by the way.
I think so. I think I was the only one up all night that wasn't out plowing snow. So, I don't know if there's one particular thing. I've been. It's been a great honor for me to be in the public service, to work for the town of North Haven for a number of years, and then subsequently North Branford. So to have a career where you're given an opportunity to give back to the community has been a great honor, and I've always enjoyed that. This is a great community in North Haven. I grew up in Wallingford, so I'm very familiar with that town as well, and that's a wonderful community. In fact, I saw something a few months ago at the Red Cross. Somebody was sharing some historical photos, and there was a picture from the, I shouldn't tell you the year, but it was from the period where I grew up in Wallingford, and it was at the community pool, and it was of one of the water safety instructors teaching a class, and it was the same era that I took the classes in, and I don't think it was Mrs. Leone, my teacher, but I remember going there as a kid and taking those classes and how important it was, and then I took class after class and learned how to swim, and I mean that was critical. I became certified as a lifeguard. I was on the swim team in high school and for a bit, and it allowed me to take me through a period of time. So that's something that you can't put a value on some of those things, and having the opportunity to help for me bring some of that messaging back to the community has been great. So I don't know if there's I can't answer one question. I think I've been blessed to be part of the community, to have my family, my 3 daughters and my wife be part of the community as well. We're still involved. We have an organization called Kids for Kids.
I was going to touch on that. That's when I first met you.
Yeah.
Through Tony Perza.
Yeah.
You were working with Kids for Kids.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, aren't they down the hall over here?
We're right down the hall here. We've had an office here for about 15 years through the generous cooperation of the Longobardi family and Candid Associates, and we have a little corner of the world. We've been around a little more than 20 years now. I think this is our 22nd year. We're just starting, and we've been able to generate funds and support for sick and needy children during that time, and I think we've raised a little over $1 million in that process. So
incredible. Now, do you have any events coming up in the near future with Kids for Kids?
I think we're working on a couple of different projects. We just finished our big fundraiser, which was at the high school at the Pat Brozak Auditorium. It's a beautiful facility, and so honored to be part of that. The high school community, the staff there does just such a great job, and we're able to, I don't want to say showcase, but we're able to send the message to the kids that are there. We have several hundred that come as part of this dance competition. Wow. We're able to send the message of giving back to their community and paying it forward, and it takes those donations and expands them hundreds of times. So our last event was back in April. We take a little bit of a rest. We do a holiday show where all the toys go into the Toys for Tots program. I think they actually are targeted to some neighborhoods in New Haven, and we're able to do that. And I think our junior board is working on a chalk fest, and we've been in conversations with an amazing family, the Jakes family in town, Maddie Jake's parents, and we're looking to collaborate with them and the high school football team on doing a kickoff celebration. It might be in the form of a chalk fest on the green. So we're working on that.
Now, if anyone would like information on Kids for Kids, do you have a website?
We do. It's KFK dancingforlife.org, I think, or they can Google us and they'll find us eventually, or go find us on Facebook. But that's kind of the thing that my family and I have done recreationally for over 20 years now.
God, yeah, that's when I first. That's when I first met you.
You're a very busy fellow. I'll tell you. I'm getting tired just listening. It's just like, oh wow.
It's all good.
Yeah.
For me, to work professionally for a nonprofit like the American Red Cross, where everything is so mission focused, it just seems so natural. And I've really been blessed to be there and to be able to help in some small way deliver the mission that we have.
You know, Rich said he grew up in Wallingford. I'm the reverse. I grew up in North Haven. Now I'm living in Wallingford.
Right.
But North Haven will always be my home.
Yeah. With about 3 minutes left to go, hit us again, the website, how we can get involved with the American Red Cross, and just real quick, how important is it that somebody get up off their hiney and come and volunteer?
Absolutely.
You know, the Red Cross is easily accessed through redcross.org, www.redcross.org, and that will take you to any number of opportunities. If they can't do anything at all and they wanted to donate funds, those funds are used, and 91 cents on every dollar goes to the delivery of the mission. So it's the type of thing where if you have a little bit of talent and a lot of time, that's wonderful. We'll take that person. If you have a lot of time and a little bit of talent, or did I say that already?
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you have the reverse, if you have a lot of talent and a little bit of time, that's great too. But we're always looking for volunteers. The mission never stops, and there's always opportunity to do more. If we have the right people around us, and whether it's delivering those classes or helping people at a blood drive or responding to a disaster, whether it's large or small, or any series of things that we do to keep the organization vibrant and going, all of that work is appreciated. I can tell you, we just did a volunteer recognition event where the leader of our volunteers brought a check up that represented the donation of Connecticut-only volunteers to the Red Cross just this past year, and the check was valued at over $2 million.
Wow.
So that's a monetary.
Amazing.
It can't put a number on the value that the volunteers have for us, but when you do equate it to monetary terms, it's staggering.
And as we always say, no gift is too small.
Right.
It's not. It's
we gotta wrap this up.
Rich,
It has been
a pleasure once
hour.
again.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
It has
you.
been a
Thank you very
fantastic
much.
hour. I learned.
Thank you.
You know, you think the Red Cross and you just think giving
Yeah.
blood, but wow, it's
There's
giving
a
a whole lot more.
There's a lot
I really
going
appreciate what you do.
Don't touch that dial.
Yeah,
Stay
we'll
right
be-
there
yeah,
for
we'll
the
be back
squared
in a
circle.
couple minutes with the squared circle.
Hopefully Hollywood J is going to join us.
Well, I think he's going to drop in at some point, so we'll see you in a minute or two.
That's great.
Good night.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
You get to do happy talk.
Great job.
Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Turn your dial to cable 18. You will see the best in TV. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Sit back and listen. You will hear the best conversation of the year. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom.